This is Tim Anderson, Captain of Verde Search and Rescue. This video is of the memorial ceremony for Michael Campbell, held on January 29th, 2022 in Sedona, Arizona. Michael died in a tragic motorcycle accident in Longview, Texas on January 3rd, 2022. He had traveled to Texas from Cottonwood in November of 2021 and was visiting his family at the time of his death. Michael was an esteemed member and respected instructor in VSAR for over 18 years and participated in hundreds of search and rescue missions. He can never be replaced and he will always be missed. This celebration of Michael's VSAR life was hosted by VSAR for Michael's family, as his daughter Dwana and his son Duncan had requested to meet VSAR so they could learn about Michael's time and experiences with what they regard as Michael's second family, that is Verde Search and Rescue.
What I'd like to do is to introduce Michael's family through Dwana. We're very fortunate there are 13 members of Michael's family here. And Dwana, his daughter, will introduce them. You can talk.
Okay, very good. Well, I just want to thank Tim for hosting us and for all of those that are here today in memory of my father. It just means a lot to us, and we're looking forward to hearing their stories. After we meet, we've got small tokens of appreciation. We wish that you would partake, small plans. Well, thank you, Cookie, but thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. So, somebody new that we recently met, a distant family member, I'll start, is Sally. She's really the genealogy expert, the one that's bringing our family history and our records and just introducing us to family and things that we didn't know about our history and our genealogy. So, Sally, we're glad to have you here with us. So my name is Dwana Stewart. I am Michael's youngest and only daughter. My husband, Todd Stewart, my granddaughter, Peyton Wardlaw, my oldest daughter, Joanna Wardlaw, and my grandson, Corbin. Go ahead and stand up. Wave. And this is my brother and his girlfriend, Duncan Campbell and Jessimer, and my mother, Gina, and her husband, Joe. My youngest and my only son, Joshua Stewart.
Joshua, you got to stand up.
And this is our dear family friend, Kathleen Benoit. And this is my middle daughter, Sarah Cappan. My brother is going to come up and just say, a few words from his heart to him. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
I didn't prepare anything to say, but I want to thank everybody for being here and for being part of my dad's life. It's just good to see everybody and just to know a part of what he spent here. And I don't know, it's just overwhelming. I appreciate all of you, and Tim especially putting the effort into all of this. It's very good to know that he was in good company of great people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. And now a bit of the story about how we got here. So after Michael's very tragic and sad passing, Dwana actually reached out to the police department, saying, do you have a Verde Search and Rescue or something similar? How do I get a hold of them? She left a message on our Verde Search and Rescue VSAR Facebook page and reached out to us. And I talked to her and called her, and she said, and this is my memory, Dwana, is that she wanted to come and meet with VSAR because Michael viewed VSAR as his second family. And she wanted to see what his second family was like because he talked a lot about Verde Search and Rescue and missions and the fun that he had with his second family. And so what I thought would be an appropriate memorial for Michael is actually have as much of his family as we could here, which is great, with 13 people here. And I would actually go through our photo archives, find photos of Michael, all of which relate to some type of story, and then we would have Michael's friends and members give a story about Michael. And I told the VSAR members, the photo is just illustrative of the types of activities and missions, and that photo can be the start of their story. But each of the story that you'll hear today is from the VSAR members' hearts about Michael. There are 15 photos, 15 stories, about 12 people. Some people couldn't be here because of either a COVID positivity or other illness in the family. One of them, we're very fortunate, will call in from her COVID quarantine to tell her story. So I think with that, let's just get started. The first, Al. Yep, you're still here, great. Al will talk about when VSAR was awarded Unit of the Year. Stand with your belt buckle there. Yes, sir.
I'm still in my Army mentality. Yes, sir. Now, this is an interesting picture. You can see Michael on the right side of the photograph. This was the SAR conference of 2011, and the Verde Search and Rescue was the Search and Rescue Unit of the Year for Arizona for 2010. Michael was a major player in that effort. He was on many searches that year, a major contributor, very dedicated searcher, but it reminds me of some other things. First of all, at SAR conferences, Michael taught land navigation. At least 6 SAR conferences, he taught land navigation as part of that. And the SAR conference, if you don't know, is a gathering of deputies and volunteers from all the counties. And they take different skills and different courses during the SAR conference. It's usually a 3-day event, and Michael was dedicated to that. At the more local level, Michael taught at SAR Basic. He taught wilderness safety and survival at SAR Basic for probably 10 to 12 years. And I'm talking SAR Basic, meaning 3 events a year, almost every year. He was, when the Association of the search deputies, they call themselves ASARCA, of which our deputy here, Adam Hansen, is the representative from Yavapai. They officialized, formalized the skills into task books. And right off the bat, Michael became a certified instructor in land navigation, in survival, and in low-angle rescue. And in fact, he was our low-angle rescue specialist up until when he departed the unit. He also, in that search and rescue mode, he did some training in Mojave County for their search and rescue people. He did a survival course for them. He did one down in Maricopa for them also. So he was a dedicated search and rescue member right from the start. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Just to talk a little bit about Al. Al joined the unit in 1995. Correct, Al?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And Michael joined in 2003. 2003. Okay. Frank. This is a bit different. Frank's going to tell us about this story.
That's me. That's our buddy, Michael. Good friend.
Would you like to talk with this or
No,
hand mic?
I'll be just fine. Can you hear me this way?
I can hear you better this way.
No, thank you.
Better.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. There's more to this than VCI with this program. We've been very close friends for many years. We had a group that not only does he work with the volunteer with the president from the search and rescue, we do Friends of the Forest things. we were all doing water sampling for the water quality department in the state of Arizona. We were also site stewards as a group of us. There's a half a dozen of us that did all these things together for over years. On this thing here, every Christmas we would go out and have Christmas lunch, and then we'd have a gathering at my house, and my wife Carol and I would have coffee and desserts and other things. Really enjoyed it. We did this for I don't know how many years. Probably since 05 or 03, something like that. But let's get there. The first thing we did on this cookie thing is my wife was the president of the Friends of the Horse for about 09. And she said was responsible for trail monitoring. And if anybody did not volunteer for a particular day or trail, she says, Frank, you've got the job. You're going to go out and hike it. So this is Christmas morning. It was in the upper 30s, a very cold day. So I called Alan and I called Spence, and we got together and met there. When we got there to do a hike, I couldn't believe it, but I believe it must have been Spence who came with cookies. He's always known as the cookie master. So we started hiking and passing out cookies, and everybody was laughing. We were enjoying it so much. This is not a bad idea. So at our luncheon that day, we discussed it with our group. Then at our house, we said, this is a great idea. We got to continue doing this. So we did it for a number of years with mostly SAR, but we also had some other people. But our group included Alan, Spence, Michael Campbell, myself, and we had, who else did we have?
Mike Ward.
Bob Schumann came in. But those are the core group that was involved in that. We had a great time. I missed him. On last Christmas, just a month ago, I gave him a call while he was in there and told him that the usual suspects are going to get together for our luncheon. And I said, we're going to miss him. And he said, don't worry, I'm going to be back. He says, I really enjoyed working on the bathroom cabinet on my daughter. He said, he's really, really happy to do that. I love the guy very much, and I'll miss him.
Thank you, Frank. I think I need to point out this very strange individual in black is Al. Spence is video recording. Michael and Mike Ward is also sitting in the back, right here. And this Bell Rock is probably one of the, I hate to say popular, but one of the most frequent sources of search and rescue. And particularly when they're on the very top and it's nighttime. That's one of our most fun and driven rescues. Which Michael was on many of those Bell Rock rescues. And Al, I'd like you to talk about particular aspects of this picture of Michael.
As you can see, that was taken the same day as the previous photograph. What I want to highlight is look what he's wearing around his neck. That's a badger paw. There's a camp out up in Idaho and one in the desert. One's called Winter Count, one's called Rabbit Stick. 500 or more people attend for the week. Michael was an instructor at both of those events. His area of instruction was fire, primarily. I know it shocked some of you in our unit, but you love fire. Why the badger paw? In about 2005, a lot of the fire makers at these events said, you know, we should form a society. And they decided they would name it after the merchant god in the Mayan codexes, the Mayan merchant god, and his name was Ek Chua. And so we became the Ek Chua Fire Society, and the symbol was the badger claw. And you say, why the badger claw? An example is the Zuni. In the Zuni, a clan gathering, an official formal ceremony cannot be started without a fire. And they were not allowed to start the fire unless a member of the Badger clan came over and did the fire start for them. That's how they had a lot of those kind of relationships. Societies sort of went across all the clans, and of course the clans were vertical, like families and all. So he was one of the original members of the Ectois Fire Society. He taught probably at over 20 campouts from Rabbit Stick and Winter Count. He taught at VSAR days. We used to have a weekend VSAR day every March. And he did fire demos at those for more than 10 years, every year. When we weren't doing VSAR days, March is Archaeological Awareness Month for Arizona. And he would do demos at the fire station, on the patio, fire demos, on the off weekends, away from the VSAR day. He liked to train, he liked to share the skill. And another example is he gave fire lessons to 62 Boy Scouts on the Verde River that were there for a camp out weekend. Another example is he trained Boar Star. If you don't know what Boar Star is, it's Border Patrol, search, trauma, and rescue. And they're primarily medics that go out and help people that have crossed the border, got into the desert, and then they're in extremis of the heat. And 2 elements of Boar Star came up here, and Michael provided them fire training, both those elements. After they were trained, their boss made them all get in the river. This was in January. Get in the river, go into mild hypothermia and come out, and they had to start a fire with one of the methods that they were taught by Michael. So, pretty interesting. So.
I think you and Michael also taught dug agave pits and showed how the Indians roasted agave, if I remember. Hey, Kern. Would you like a microphone? Or?
I'll try this and see how it goes. I'd rather be like Frank and say, no microphone. Hi, I'm Peg. I've been a member of Search and Rescue for 10 years now, British Search and Rescue. Al and Frank are a pretty hard act to follow. They've got a lot of really good stories. Mine are a bit more related to training, which you're already hearing a lot about Michael's tremendous contribution to our search and rescue group with all of his training skills. When I started, I had no experience whatsoever, and I was lucky enough to be guided by Michael, along with a few others, in learning some of the basic skills needed when I started volunteering. So in this photo, we have just conducted a mock search and rescue exercise where we had to bring a subject, or we call the people that we're rescuing, we call them subjects typically, or a patient in this case, who had purportedly injured himself and needed to be carried out. And as was mentioned by either Tim or Al, one of Michael's skills that was greatly needed within the unit was called low-angle rescue. And low-angle rescue included often putting a subject or a patient into some sort of device that we could use to help carry them out because they were unable to walk out. And we're talking in Sedona. Those of you that have never been here before have been seeing some of the red rocks probably. They're never down low. They're always up high when they get injured. So we need to, what we call, package the subject. And that's what Michael instructed us in. This particular exercise, this particular day, was in utilizing this low-angle rescue, packaging a subject. And the device that we're carrying, I don't know if you can see or not, but there's a person horizontal in the picture. And they're in what's called a sked, S-K-E-D, which is really an incredibly uncomfortable, hard plastic, rigid plastic, with a couple of handles that we then have to carry the subject out across all sorts of terrain. So Michael was there to instruct us in how to secure the person, the patient, in that so that they didn't further injure themselves, because we didn't want that to happen certainly, So he knew how to strap them in, how to tie them in, and to make them as comfortable as you could, which was pretty uncomfortable in this case. In this case, this was one of our other search and rescue volunteers, Charlie, who was the one that was actually being our patient in that case. You'll also notice that Michael isn't doing any of the heavy lifting, right? He was the instructor. That's one of the great benefits of being the instructor. You can have everyone else do the work. And he knew that all too well. But the rest of the team, we have 6 people that are actually carrying the patient or the subject, and more people because we have to swap out very frequently. Because again, this is the tail end of it. This is the easy part. We're approaching base. But when we're coming down steep slopes and across rocks and uphill, downhill, whatever, we frequently will change out who's doing what. So again, Michael was our instructor for this particular skill set, and he was really very adept at it and knew exactly how to do all these things, how to successfully and safely secure someone, and to a certain extent make them as comfortable as he could, mostly by asking us, okay, who has extra clothing? We're going to use it as pillows, put underneath the person in this hard plastic, and so we'd all be emptying out our packs and trying to figure out how to make it somewhat more comfortable. He also taught us how to use what we call the webbing strap, which you'll see over some of the shoulders, and that was a way to distribute the weight when we're carrying them. So you don't just use your hand to carry, you actually have a strap go around that can help essentially shoulder the weight. So he was really good at teaching us and making sure we were safe and knew how to do that. Let's see what else. And like I said, when I joined, I had no skills whatsoever in any of these things. I'd never seen a sked or a Stokes basket, which is another contraption that we use to carry people out. And Michael knew all the knots, all the all the strapping techniques. And he was very, very patient because I needed a lot of help. And over again, he worked with me until I finally understood how to strap someone into one of these things and carry them out safely. So this is just one example of the many skills that Michael had and shared with, as you've heard, not just with our unit of Verde Search and Rescue, but also with all the other units within our county and even other counties. So he clearly was a master instructor for many of us. And he made us all better for it. We can't thank him enough for that.
Thank you, Peg. Let me just say for Michael's family, if would any of you like bottles of water? We have water over here. Anyone? Okay. On the party, Frank. A very nice tradition of VSAR, birthday lunch parties. Frank's going to tell us about it.
Michael was part of our family for all of us in many different ways. We always celebrated our birthdays as a family that started. We'd have anywhere from 7 to maybe a dozen of us that would be meeting for the thing. We not only had these birthday things as a family, but periodically we would go and have dinners at Wildflower. And we had a great time at the Wildflower because after we got done, we'd sit there for a couple of hours and always talk about the great things we've done. Fortunate we have such friends. He's a marvelous man. So as time went on, we started having went to the guy's birthday party. We left the wives at home. Mother-in-law, Alan, his mother, I should say mother-in-law. So we had a great time with all these birthdays. Like I say, he was always included, always enjoyed us, we always enjoyed everything. And I miss him dearly when, I can't tell you the number of times he said that this is the first time that he's ever had so many friends. And he really meant it. And we really enjoyed them. But the birthday parties are still fun. We still do them. In fact, we just had Alan's 81st birthday last Thursday. And I had an empty chair for Michael Campbell with us. So that's how much we value it.
He actually was wanting to come back in time for some birthdays. Maybe it was part of that he was missing. But he was wanting to come back in time for some birthdays.
That's right, and that was Alan's. And mine doesn't come up until June. In these last Christmas ones that we're doing, the last 2 years, we've been going to Michael Ward's house for Christmas because he actually has a tree. We haven't had a tree in years. Does a great job, marvelous in there. But Michael is going to be very much missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. There's a trend here of parties. Don't think that VSAR is just parties. But these are some of the fun times we've had in addition to some of the tough times we've had. Mike Vitek.
Good afternoon. I met Michael a year after he joined SAR, I joined SAR, and he was an excellent mentor to us. The one thing we did every year in SAR, we had a Christmas party for new members, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever, and we always had a good time at these parties. Everybody entertained each other. We usually have a gift exchange and stuff like that. At this party, you can see one of the members was given a box of dog bones. Oh, why a box of dog bones? Well, about 2 weeks earlier, this member had been bitten by a dog. Not Michael's dog. Ginger would never bite anybody. So we figured as a little gag gift, we'd give this member a box of dog bones saying, you can feed these to the dog and not your leg. And we knew that in the end, Michael would end up with this box of dog bones for Ginger. The other love of Michael's life were his dogs. When I met Michael, his first dog was Amy. Sweet dog. I mean, friendly to anybody around. And after she passed away, he got Ginger, another rescue dog, another very sweet dog that loved everybody. Come up to everybody, wanted to be petted, wanted to be hugged. You couldn't ask for a better friend with an animal because he was so good at training them that they loved everybody. So it was really an honor knowing him and being around him. He was a good mentor, as everybody said. He trained everybody, and he kept doing it all the way. We enjoyed him, and he would help people out. One day, Al and I were on a search, and Michael was on a search, and we were down at a place called Bullpen at night, and Al's riding for me in the Jeep, and Al drove me into a ditch. Well, we did the search, and Michael was able to recover my Jeep from the ditch. And, without even thinking about it, he was always there to help people and keep us safe and keep us going. So he was a great, great friend, and he's going to be missed dearly by us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And that reminds me, we should talk a bit about Ginger. So you saw Ginger and Michael in the first picture. Ginger has been adopted by Duncan and Jess, who took a deep attachment to each other. This morning, Duncan told me Ginger needed a name change. She maybe not have thought so, but yeah, there was another Ginger already in your family, another dog called Ginger. Ginger is right in front here. Okay? And so Ginger's new name, which Duncan told me she's learning, is Roo, or kangaroo, because of her hobby. Okay. So Ginger is now transitioning to Roo. And Duncan, is she learning the name very well?
She's learning the name very well.
Okay, good.
Well, we mistakenly call her Ginger all the time. Yeah.
Okay, this is this is a picture of Michael and Pink Cook and Mike and Al and Rick at training. Rick was going to be here, but he had a death in the family. He's on his way to Chicago right now, and I asked Rick, please send your story to me and I'll read it for you. So I'll read what Rick wrote for his story. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rick Baldoff. I am recently retired from VSAR. When I joined the unit in 2010, I didn't know what a compass was, let alone a GPS. Like Peg, Michael, however, was already a search and rescue veteran. The picture you are looking at was taken at one of our regular training locations, in this case, GPS training. Michael was a major cog in most of our training efforts, always quick to step up and help regardless of the subject, which might be search and rescue theory and application, GPS, map and compass, wilderness survival, medical and first aid, or radio communications. As a past training officer and captain, Rick was our captain for 4 years, I was grateful for his willingness to help lead training sessions. Today I would like to share one search story about Michael with you. It was a line search effort looking for human remains, which is part of our job, that the unit was asked to participate in a few years back outside a town called Seligman. A line search is what it sounds like. Participants are assigned a search grid to search area. They line up in a straight line, equal distance apart, moving from one end of the search area grid to another, to the opposite. Then you slide over a few ways and repeat the process in the opposite direction. This way you cover, you may have people 5 feet apart and you're covering then the 2.5 feet between each person, and it's a very effective way for searching a wide area. A line leader is appointed or volunteers. In this case, Michael was the line leader, whose responsibilities include, among many things, investigating any clues discovered by search members, authorizing radio communications with incident command, and the hardest job of all, keeping the team in a straight line. We still have this problem. The leader is usually at or near the center of the line so the individual can monitor what is happening toward each end. That day, several members of another search and rescue unit, whose duties do not usually include line searching, were assigned to us, including one young lady that I guess did not really grasp the concept. Michael would give the order to move forward, and soon she would be wandering off somewhere to the left, or to the right, or falling behind everyone else, poking her walking stick into clumps of cacti or a wood rat nest. Michael would give the order for the line to hold up and ask her to get back in place, several times explaining why it is important for members to stay in a line. We would then resume, and usually within moments she would wander off again. That never happens to us, right, Nick? You could tell he, and we for that matter, were getting pretty frustrated. After 2 or 3 passes through the grid, he ordered a rest break, taking her aside for a discussion. At the end, she picked up her gear and left. My search position that day was next to Michael. When he ordered us to resume, I asked him where she was going. He said, I told her why it was important to follow commands, and that if she couldn't conduct the search as instructed, she was welcome to leave. I guess she decided she couldn't, so she did. Things went much smoother after that. Michael did most everything by the book. He took pride in his work, and even more importantly, conducted himself in a manner that generated respect, both for himself and Birdie Search and Rescue. He will be missed, both as a mentor and as a good friend. Rest in peace, Michael. God bless. So that was from Rick. This is Michael in another evidence search. This is, you see Michael standing in water. He's actually standing in Turkey Creek, which is an area south of Sedona, or between here and Phoenix. And the story here is that you see Michael standing in water. He was part of a line search team that were going up the creek. And the reason we were there is that another hiker in the creek had found human leg bones. And whenever something like that happens, it's the sheriff's duty to search and see, are they indeed human? And can we find more? And what's the story? So we were called out for a line search on Turkey Creek. Very, very hard, very rocky. The team was going down the creek, the team going up the creek. And Michael was part of the team that day. that actually found several other human bones in the creek. And we would find them, we would catalog the location, call them into incident command, which happened to be Deputy Matt at that time. And Michael was very involved in this, and he was always, I remember Michael was always saying, was watching out for others. You know, footing was not so good in this creek, and he would help others. He would help others around rocks. He was just very, very sharing and cautious person for us. It turns out that the bones of the individual we found then were sent to the medical examiner. We were able to collect them, bag them, sent to the medical examiner. DNA analysis showed that they were from an individual that we had also looked for a year prior. This individual had left his pickup running along a road and disappeared. We did a line search extensively in adjacent areas, did not find him. Lo and behold, a year later, Michael helped find him in this creek. So again, that's just an evidence of the story of Michael being very involved, very caring for members, and helping with the evidence search for the Sheriff's Department. Another evidence search. At first it looked like we were doing parties all the time. Now it looks like we're doing evidence searches, which is a big part of our job for the Sheriff's Department. This is a beautiful canyon between here and Phoenix. When you go to Phoenix, you'll pass Sunset Point Rest Area, and there were two individuals that had, I think their car had broken down in a median. They had walked into this area behind Michael, and one of them had disappeared, and we were assigned to do a line search through some very relatively tough terrain and very tall grass. Again, Michael helped with the line search, and we would go maybe a mile or two in one direction, turn around, and come back in the other direction. It's very, very hard in the tall grass where you could barely see the individual, next to you. But again, Michael was very instrumental in helping conduct the line search. When we got here, we were so tired that we were resting. We decided to rest before we started our way back. And what was very interesting for me is, Michael said, "Tim, could you take my photo?" He was interested enough in the beauty of the area that he wanted a photo. I don't know if he ever sent this to anyone, Joanna, but he wanted a photo. And Michael almost never, focused on himself or wanted a photo of himself. So to me, the beauty of the canyon, and Michael on the edge of it saying, "Tim, please take a photo." That's one of my good memories of Michael. Now, those of you that know Michael know that this is Michael's beast. The big blue truck, the beast. And Jill Wadlin, who has the orange Jeep and is scraping the snow off, is going to talk about this, but Jill is taking care of her brother with some medical issues today, so I've asked Al of which, who is the other orange guy. Al.
Yeah, this is a good example of in supporting Yavapai County Sheriff's Office. There are other missions besides searches. One thing I remember very clearly was Michael's participation in the Yarnell fire, the famous Yarnell fire, where he pulled roadblock duty at night and during the day in a lot of the places around the fire, keeping people out of there. We call them looky-loos who try to sneak in. And it happens a lot. They do try to sneak in. This is a case where they were taking people arriving at a facility in Prescott. They wanted to bring nurses in. They were providing vaccinations, snowing very heavily, and so the mission was to transport the medical people from their homes to the facility, and then in the evening, 4 or 5 o'clock, transport them back home. That was a major effort that day, because it snowed all day and all the next day. A lot of we had some fires recently over near Crown King, and Michael was involved in 2 of the night missions at that fire. One was roadblock. In fact, I think both of them were roadblocks on the bottom of the Senator Highway, and then a different location over near Crown King on that. Michael was very forward-leaning on all the missions, not just going out and searching for people. This is a good example here. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. So you've seen a big range of missions, evidence searches, search and rescues, transporting of medical personnel in the snow to COVID clinics. And Arizona is such a place that we go from snow during one season to fires the next season, all of which Michael is very involved in. And this is Mingus Mountain. Bob, can you tell us a little bit about this rescue?
I'm Bob Schumann, and yes, I was the person who got bit by the dog. I've known Michael for quite a while, ever since I've been in VSAR, and actually Michael is the second oldest member in VSAR, not in terms of age, but in terms of seniority. Al is the most senior member, and then Michael was the second most senior member in VSAR. This was a particular search we had on Mingus Mountain, and the subject was probably by GPS coordinates about 1,000 feet down on Mingus Mountain. So it was our task to hike down and get the subject. And Michael's generally a very excellent hiker and in really good shape. But in this particular mission, I noticed he was having issues coming down. His back was hurting. And I turned to Michael several times and I said, "You want to stop and just hang out here and we'll pick you up on the way back?" And Michael said, no, I can continue. And he did continue all the way down until we got close to the subject. And Tim, who was in that, oh, he's not.
I took the picture.
Oh, he's taking the picture, sorry. And Don, who is on the left, Don Morgan, went to the subject and retrieved the subject while me and Michael kind of stayed on a ledge where a crossroads of trails were. And we were trying to figure out whether there was a better way to get out of there than going back up on the trail. But it turned out we decided that it was best just to continue back up on the trail. And I knew Michael was going to have some issues because he was hurting on the way down. So we started on the way back, and this particular subject would not stop talking. She was a chatterbox. And finally, Michael turns to me and gives me a funny look. And I said, I kind of nodded my head and I said, "Yeah, I know what you're talking about." So I turned to Tim, and while the subject wasn't looking, I go like this. And Tim, in his eloquent, diplomatic way, said, "Well, why don't we hike the rest of the way up in some silence and enjoy the beauty." Very diplomatic of Tim to do that. I wouldn't have been that diplomatic. And so we continued on, and she was quiet for a while. But Michael was having problems, and so Tim suggested that he and Michael stay behind and hike up much slower. And Don and I continued on up with the subject so we can deliver them to our deputy, who happened to be Adam at the time. And so we did, and so Michael hung back with Tim, and we continued on. And as it happens, she started up talking again. And she chatted all the way up, and and Don was giving me kind of funny looks. And she couple of times she turns to us and says, "Well, we can continue on. I can continue on without you. I can just get up there and go, and you guys can go up at your own pace." And I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "Once you call us, you become our responsibility. We cannot let you go up on your own." And finally, after about 3 or 4 times telling her that, she realized that she wasn't going to get away from us until we can turn her over to our deputy. So she continued on up, and once we got up to close to the top, one of the backcountry guys, which was another group of our VSAR out of Prescott, I think Larry was the person, was there, I said, why don't you take the subject on and introduce her to Adam and get her away from us. And he said, okay, I'll do that. And so he took her on and introduced you, and you took over, and it was your responsibility at that point, because we had enough of her. But I think that was one of Michael's last searches with us too. He was just a pleasant fellow to be around, and a really nice guy, and a great hiker, and he will be missed very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And now for the rest of the story on that search. The very talkative subject, I think she was anxious and maybe talking a lot. And what was particularly bothersome is too strong a word, but slowing us down, is Michael was being very kind to her and be walking along talking, and then he would stop and turn around and they'd discuss a point. And then walk another 20 feet, turn around and discuss a point, because Michael was being very kind. And that's when we decided to try to put the silence mode on, very, very diplomatically. But the other part of that is that, Bob mentioned Michael was not feeling well. He was having back pain. On the way back, Michael started getting woozy-headed, weak-headed, weak. He would have to stop and sit down. And it turns out that he had just been prescribed 2 new blood pressure medicines. He had 2 medicines that the doctor's probably trying to figure out how much he needed, the doses, the right time. And it just turned out he had too much blood pressure medicine and he had low blood pressure. And he was hiking 1,000 feet up a mountain to get back to base. It was difficult for him. He was having to stop. And so finally I said, Michael, let me carry your pack. He resisted. He kept going for another 20, 50 feet. And he said, okay. And so I carried his pack. And our packs are about 25 pounds. So I was carrying my pack and his pack, and then I had to stop and rest. But Michael was able to continue then, and we called this in to Deputy Hansen, and Deputy Hansen sent 2 or 3 other VSAR members down to help us. We met them, and then I transferred Michael's pack to Jennifer, I believe. Jennifer and Stephen, yep, right? And they helped us then get back up the mountain. But the story is, Michael, he was toughing it out until he finally, the blood pressure medicine was too high, and he was getting too lightheaded. And then, once we got back to base, Michael was feeling better, and we were all debriefed with Deputy Hansen, going home. And we said, Michael, we're going to follow you home. He said, no, you don't need to follow me home. Don't. And he was getting mad. He didn't want that type of attention. We followed him home, all the way home, and myself, Deputy Hansen, made sure he got there, and he was appreciative, but still he thought we were paying too much attention to him. He did go to his doctor. He dropped one of the 2 blood pressure medicines. Michael got back to normal, and after that he went on several searches, or a couple at least anyway, totally normal. So that's another story where Michael persevered through pain, wanted to persevere through low blood pressure, and finally he said, okay, you can help me. This is Black Canyon Orientation Hike, and our member, Dondi, I'll show you Dondi. Dondi and Michael. Dondi, are you there? Can you hear us? I'm going to turn you up. Speak a little louder, Dondi. Okay, Dondi, try it again.
How is the volume now on the phone call?
Now it's perfect. Thank you, Dondi. Everyone can hear you very well. Tell us your story.
All right. Okay, well, usually people want to silence me, so this is different. All right. Well, hello to everybody there. My name is Dondi West. Sorry I can't be there. I just want to give a special thanks to Duana for finding VSAR on Facebook. Thank you for coming. This picture represents teamwork. My first VSAR meeting was February of 2020. Well, we were just talking about COVID. I meet this guy in this meeting, floppy hat, long gray ponytail. You know who I'm talking about. We started talking 4x4s. Michael took me outside before the meeting, and he shows me this big old truck. He had everything in this truck to do 4x4 rescues. I realized I had a lot to learn at that point. This picture reflects a year and a half later. We're team training for the Black Canyon orientation hike. We recently participated in 2 call-outs in this area, one involving a woman lost overnight, and the second involving a mountain biker lost at night. Both of those people were recovered safely, but we realized we needed a bigger plan. This team training involves mountain bikes, hikers, and 4x4s. So our goal is to train to become a little more familiar with the area. And on this date, the training involved a 7-mile hike downhill. Well, to go downhill, it's best to start at the top of the hill. The 4x4 group was tasked with providing transport for the hikers and the mountain bikers. We had 4 4x4 vehicles. Now, Michael knew these trails on Mangus Mountain. Yeah, I had my trusty GPS, but I don't know the roads. Knowing Michael was in our group was always comforting. I'd learned a lot about my 4x4 since our first meeting, but I could not replace the actual experience that Michael provided to our team. Michael always either led our 4x4 trail drives or brought up the rear as a safety measure. Either way, we were always guaranteed to get there. Teamwork. I love this picture because it represents teamwork at VSAR. The day ended with a special experience sitting and waiting for the ground team, as you see here, to return to the parking lot. I got to hang out with Michael, Al Cornell, and Mike Vitek. All were telling me stories of their previous experiences. I mean, I can't get this type of lesson or teamwork back. I'm so sorry I could not be there today, but again, VSAR represents teamwork, and Michael was a great part of our team.
Thank you, Dottie. Your story came across excellently. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for calling in. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
I don't think Dottie would mind if I told you she was planning to be here. She had a positive COVID test on Friday. You see how COVID changes much of our life. Next. By the way, I must say the 4x4s had it easy that day. They got to take us up. And then the 7-mile hike down several hours later, they were waiting for us down there. Mangus Mountain. So part of search and rescue is, and that Michael was very involved in, was wilderness survival training. And this, we have 3 pictures from wilderness survival training just as recent as October. Gary Gallerstein, you have a story about this.
Thanks, Tim, and it's really nice to see all of you here. First, let me say, Michael was a good guy. He was a friend. My wife describes him as a sensitive soul, which he was. Wilderness survival. We spend a lot of time on this subject. The core triad of things we pay most attention to is shelter, fire, and clothing. And clothing's kind of the easy part. If it's bad weather, you never have bad weather, you only have bad clothing choices. This is on Mangus Mountain, which is about 20 miles west of here. About once a year, we have a gathering where VSAR members have the option of spending the night out. And that can be important because sometimes if we have to extract a subject that's injured, we can't go about it in the dark, especially if a helicopter has to come in. So we sometimes have to spend the night out with the subject. It doesn't happen often, but we have to be prepared for that. So this is the training. The VSAR members are required to erect a shelter and start a fire and keep that fire going all night long. And there's an art to that. Anybody can start a fire when it's hot and dry. Try starting a fire when it's wet outside and all your timber's wet. And I can tell you, I learned a lot from Michael on that subject. Michael was the second certified survival instructor at VSAR. I'll be the first, and I'm the third. So I got a chance to be mentored by Michael quite a bit. This is the morning after we spent the night out. And needless to say, when you're trying to keep a fire going all night long, you don't get a lot of sleep. So what does Michael do? Well, first of all, let me backtrack a second and tell you, we selected a campsite. How Michael and I went up and selected the right campsite that could fit all the cars and the campsites and what have you. Michael had resigned VSAR in September. This is October now. And Michael went up to Mingus Mountain, and 3 days before we were ready to start the sleep out, Michael secured this campsite for us. 3 days before, he was up there making sure we could get the choice campsite that we had selected. And we were all very tired, so when we got up in the morning, Michael had a fire going for us. You already know he has a fascination with fire. He also did a little cooking for us, which I think Tim's going to talk about. And also notice in this picture that Michael is actually the only guy not wearing orange in that picture. Why is that? Because he resigned from VSAR. So here's a guy who resigned from VSAR, so he's not wearing the uniform. He gets up to the site 3 days before we were starting this, and he had cooked and even had hot coffee for everybody. So the take-home message here, if I could quote the Eagles song, Hotel California, and paraphrase it, once you check in, you can never check out. And that typifies Michael. And I learned a lot about fire making from him. Michael was more of a detail guy in many ways, and when I was working with the newly minted searcher, Michael would often work for me in fire making, and when we were doing primitive fire making, he'd always watch me and he'd say things like, oh, you got a little char on the end of the drill, let's shave that off, or the notch, which you guys will be learning about when Al does the demonstration. Oh, that notch is a little too deep, or it's not shallow enough, or it's not wide enough, or it's too narrow. And it's those little things that can make the difference between starting a fire or not. The other thing Michael was particularly good at is knife skills. As I understand it, his father was a custom knife maker, and Michael taught me a lot about how to handle a knife. I once laid my open pocket knife on the ground, and he immediately said, don't ever lay your pocket knife on the ground. If we were in survival training with some fellow back east, he'd pick up that knife and you might not get it back. And the last but not least, the other thing I'd like to point out in this picture is the trailer. You're going to see the inside of it, but if you didn't know, Michael built that from the chassis up. And I think it's probably on your property right now. But when you think about what goes into building a trailer, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fine woodsmanship, and of course creativity. And I was always in awe how one guy could know all those things and build what really is a spectacular trailer. So Michael, may you rest in peace. I will miss you and thank you for everything that I learned from you. Thank you.
It even had solar panels on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit about that solar in a minute.
Tim, just a picture, just a second.
Okay. Mike Harris.
Take a careful look here. Okay, the item that I pointed out in that previous picture was the reason that Ginger was lying. Oh, sorry. The item that was laying in that picture is the principal reason that Ginger was lying at my feet that day.
I decided in my infinite wisdom during this camping exercise to bring some chili and hot dogs for dinner. Everybody else is eating things out of a bag. And I set that out there, and Ginger immediately came over and says, "Okay, you're my new best buddy." So she wouldn't sleep with me that night, except she went through most of the hot dogs and half of the chili. This individual laying here very comfortably on the flat of his back was me with a tummy full of freshly cooked food. And the reason I could do that with my jacket lying in the foreground there is because Michael taught me how to make the fire the right way. And with that very small fire, I was able to stay the whole night very comfortable to the extent that I took off 2 jackets. Michael's skills were innumerable, and he was very willing to share with all of us. It was just a wonderful thing. I think he probably was one of the unifying members of VSAR. All of these people from diverse backgrounds here, there are somewhere over 30 people in the group. We all had one thing in common, and that was we all learned something from Michael. And he's going to be one of the most important people in my life as long as I can remember. I'm very grateful that somebody adopted Ginger, especially in the family. If she hadn't been adopted, I made a promise to myself that she would never see the inside of a shelter. So I was going to adopt her. But it's great that she's in the family. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mike. And now you see the inside of the trailer. So this was the next morning. You've already heard most of us were tired, keeping our fires going most of the night so that we didn't get cold. Having the embers fall around you. I remember I had a few embers on my coat, burned through them that night because you're so close to keep warm. However, the next morning, Michael had a fire going for us, he had coffee going for us, and lo and behold, he made us pancakes. And these pancakes were special because they were made out of mesquite flour that he had ground himself. And you know, Michael, he liked to live off the land. For a long time, his blood pressure medicine was extracts from cactus, as I remember it. He swore by that it worked great, until he had to go to the modern pharmaceutical type blood pressure medicine. So Michael here, he's looking at me with a little bit of a skewed look, saying, "What are you doing? Why are you taking a picture of me?" But I wanted a picture of him making pancakes. You can see the stove that he installed. There's a pancake in the pot. There's coffee there, and he is making pancake batter, I believe. But look at the inside of this trailer. Exquisite workmanship, woodcraft, metalwork, and I remember him showing me, he had solar hooked up to it to recharge the batteries and actually to run power during the day. He opened a drawer, a cabinet drawer in the trailer, and behind it was one of the most complicated, exquisite electronics panels I've seen. He said, yeah, I had to make that so that the solar inverter would run power properly into the batteries and power my units. And then Michael, survival expert, outdoors expert, yet he's also knows all the electronics, can turn up solar properly, and I was amazed. So Michael was a man of multiple needs, multiple knowledge, and like Mike and Gary said, he will always be with us in his teachings and in our memory. So Michael is truly a search and rescue professional with 18 years plus in SAR and hundreds of SAR missions. SAR, search and rescue, on average, in the last 2 years, we've found and rescued 70 people each year. In those 18 years, Michael has rescued hundreds of people on hundreds of SAR missions. So Michael left his legacy on many people that are here today because of him helping find them. And he's leaving his legacy in all the orange you see around you and the teachings that we've had. So that concludes the photos that we have from Michael. Would anyone like to say anything else about Michael? Sally? I think you can try.
I'm very shy in public speaking, and I didn't prepare anything. But, sure. I met Michael from I was on an intense genealogy quest. Our family was at Standing Rock, the reservation in North and South Dakota. And my mother had been given up for adoption at birth, and we didn't know who her father was. So I had just found that out in 2017, just before she died. So I'm a pretty good researcher. But a cousin put me on to Michael Campbell and said his father had been the genealogist of his family, our family. But it took 2 years before this cousin would finally put me in touch with him, because someone had died and she felt sensitive. And anyways, I called Michael up when I got his number on the way back from Colorado, and whatever I said, he said, come on over, sure. So I stopped into Cottonwood, and we had a really great time. I recovered a lot of the videos, which I shared with Duana. I spent the whole day there. He showed me his didgeridoos, his drums that he had made from tanning the leather himself to stretching the hides and how strong it was. He went into great detail about that. And he just continued to show me more and more. And he pulled out this box with a Supar flesh, which is from probably around 1900 or late 1800s, that his father had saved. It had the beautiful colors from the plants. There was a tobacco bag, a woman's purse from the day with a beading. What else? There was, he had a pipe. He had pictures of one of our relatives who had been a chairman for the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe that went to Washington, D.C. and smoked this pipe with Bobby Kennedy, and there was a photo of this J. Dan Howard. But our grandparents, our great-grandparents were siblings, and their mother was one of the last born before the incarceration of the reservations on Standing Rock, there in North Dakota. So that picture of the teepee that you saw early, if you noticed, it was our third great-grandmother. So she was born and raised with Sitting Bull. So we were very closely related to that part of the country. Their great-grandfather immigrated from England. His name was Ed Hodge, who changed their name to Hodgkinson. But he went on one of the last great buffalo hunts, according to a book out of London, South Dakota, where the Campbell family married into the Men's, which was a German immigrant, and they married our Indian grandmothers. So that grandfather of his was also very skilled in cabinet making, in all the arts of knives, living on the plains, building sod houses. He was said to have helped decorate Sitting Bull's coffin. He was a part of that. They all lived in the Thunderhawk area, which is where their allotments were from South Dakota. So Michael saw my passion that day, and he hadn't kept a connection to the history. He couldn't really speak to the artifacts as to exactly who owned them originally. We all have these breaks in our family. So, but he saw my passion, and that day he shoved half of those items my way and said, they're yours. So today, presently, 4 of those items are in an exhibit that are traveling around the United States right now. It's called Away from Home, American Indian Boarding Schools. It's doing 7 weeks at cities around the United States. I think it's in Florida now. So you'd have to look at the website. This is from a branch of the Smithsonian. It was under the National Endowment for Humanities. And so Michael got to see that exhibit. He was proud of that. He even shared, I think, some Facebook posts about it. Let's see this. There's a couple of notes trying to remember. Yeah, so the pipe was one thing that he loved so much. When I met him that day, he held on to that. But last spring he came out, and we probably got to hang out, very quality time at campgrounds, and I'd stayed at his house. We came out to the desert and stayed and camped in Joshua Tree and slept in his camper on the street. So he left that pipe with me last spring, and he said, well, you just hold on to it. He didn't say it's yours yet. But in a phone call a few months ago, he said, you know, you're the pipe keeper. I was like, wow. So he contributed a lot to our are reconnecting this back to our heritage, which I've been now sharing with Tawana, because I didn't know what a park flash was. And so he helped me to learn more about my heritage as well, and he got down deep really quick. So yeah, I will miss him.
Thank you. Anyone else have a story about Michael they want to share?
Hello, everyone. I am Francisca Adrian. Everyone just calls me Adrian. And I'm the Assistant Rec Staff Officer on the Red Rock Ranger District. And I want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come up here and say something nice about Michael. I met him in 2012. And the first time I met him, he was helping me to figure out how to make signs on our district. Some of the signs that you see on our trails originally were from Michael, and he was very nice to help me get that started on our district. And as a result, we now make our own signs because he taught us that. Michael was volunteering with the Forest Service as a river driver. He would pick up the river drivers, leave them off at the launch site, and then also pick them up at the end of their trips. And anyways, a couple times I was on a river trip, and I got to ride back with him, and he was telling me he really liked doing the river driving because he didn't have to beat up his truck, and he got to beat up a Forest Service truck, and he said he was a scenic view junkie. He liked scenic views, and this is why he did a lot of the things he did, because it allowed him the opportunity to see some of the beauty of the Red Rock Ranger District. And I can only imagine all the beautiful things that Michael saw throughout his life. Anyways, I just want to say thank you to the family. He will definitely be missed, and it was a real pleasure to have known him. So thank you.
Thank you. So before I close, I want to remind the group that the Verde Search and Rescue Posse that Michael volunteered and donated so much of his energies to, and we are under the responsibility of the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office. When someone is lost or they need help or injured, and they call 911, the 911 dispatch, depending on the situation, calls the Sheriff's Office. And the sheriff, the deputy sheriff, decides what type of resources are needed, dog unit, hiking unit, 4x4 unit, and calls us out. We are lucky to have a representative of YCSO, the Sheriff's Office, with us today. He is our deputy responsible for Verde Search and Rescue. The deputy, Adam Hansen, and his wife, Brenda. Adam, would you just stand up a minute? So we're very honored to have a member of the Sheriff's Department here. Worked with Michael for many years. Last call for any Michael stories. Okay, so now this concludes the indoor ceremony. Thank you very much for, Juana, do you want to say anything else?
I just wanted to remind everybody to pick the flower.
Okay. Which is over here in the basket. So this concludes the indoor ceremony. Thank you very much for your attendance. I thought we had a lot of wonderful stories. You got to see what Michael was to us, and Michael was to the unit, and Michael was to everyone that surrounded him. He's a wonderful man that will be with us forever. I think the front of the program says it best. It's hard to forget someone who gave us so much to remember. So we will be here until 3 p.m. If you want to introduce yourself to the family, Duncan, Luana, Oh, by the way, I must say something about Duncan has Ginger, and I already mentioned about Ginger's new name. I'm sorry. Okay. And the other Ginger is here, if you'd like to see her namesake. At 3 o'clock, we'll have a private family service just for the family and a few VSAR members guiding them down at Cathedral Rock. Along Oak Creek, Michael did water sampling along Oak Creek for the Forest Service for multiple years, and there are many searches on Cathedral Rock. So thank you for attending. Good afternoon.